This video will demonstrate the location and certain characteristics of connective tissue. So there are several different types of connective tissue, and to be classified in this group, there has to be living cells surrounded by a non-living matrix. And we have several different types of connective tissue. Connective tissue proper can be divided into loose connective tissue and dense connective tissue. And under loose connective tissue, we have areolar, adipose, and reticular connective tissue. Then under the dense connective tissue, we have dense regular and dense irregular, and those two are pretty much defined by how close or the orientation of the collagen fibers. And then elastic tissue, which is going to have a lot of elastic fibers in it. The supporting connective tissues include cartilage and bone, and we have three types of cartilage: hyaline, elastic, and fibrocartilage, or sometimes called fibrous cartilage. And the last kind of connective tissue would be the fluid connective tissue, blood and lymph. I'm not going to be showing a slide or a picture of lymph, but I'll be showing you a picture of all of the other types of connective tissue. Most of the slides will be taken from the Ohio State University Medical Center, and here are the links to where I got those tissues. Here's the dense dense connective tissues, and the supporting, and blood. For fibrocartilage, I did have to go to another website. There's another community college in Arizona that had a picture of fibrocartilage. So here I am at the Ohio State University Medical Center Virtual Histology Lab, and I've gone to General Histology and I've clicked Connective Tissue, and then I clicked on a connective tissue spread. And so as I magnify this, the coloring is a little bit different than if you have maybe looked at the practice anatomy slides, but this is areolar tissue. And one of the ways that I think about areolar is that there were just a whole bunch of cells and fibers and they threw it on a slide and said, here you go. It's a loose connective tissue because I see lots of empty spaces between the fibers and the cells. These are the cells of the living cells, and then the non-living matrix where this ground substance would be, and also our protein fibers. And some of the fibers look like hair fell on the slide, these thin ones. And then we have some of these thicker fibers here as well. But this is an example of areolar tissue. Now for adipose tissue, I'm actually going to go to the integumentary system, and I'm going to look at thick skin. We already saw this slide when in the previous video with the epithelium. We saw the stratified squamous epithelium. But here I'm going to show you two types of connective tissue. The first is adipose tissue. And adipose are these kind of just circle-looking shapes here. So this is fat tissue. You notice that we found it under the skin. The nuclei are pushed out to the side because the cells are filled with lipids. So this would be adipose tissue. Now above that, here we have dense irregular connective tissue. And remember that everything that we're going to be looking at in this video is connective tissue. But really all of these fibers, it doesn't look like there's much organization to their arrangement. And it is mostly, this is a dense connective tissue, but it's dense irregular because the collagen fibers are kind of just arranged any which way, it looks like. And so that we can see throughout much of this slide. Here is the dense irregular connective tissue, all of this pink. So we saw both adipose and dense irregular. All right, here is a slide of reticular connective tissue. And reticular connective tissue has a lot of reticular fibers. This slide happens to be taken from a lymph node. This is a type of loose connective tissue. And I see, if you can look carefully, you see all of these really dark lines running throughout the slide. Those are the reticular fibers, the protein fibers of this connective tissue. And then I see the white areas, that's the ground substance, or the non-living part. And then there are a whole bunch of cells here within the tissue. So this would be reticular. I'm looking for, usually it's going to be a very dark stain, but I'm looking for these dark fibers running through, and with the cells almost attached to the fibers when I'm looking for reticular connective tissue. Okay, now the next connective tissue is dense regular. I'm going to go back to the connective tissue section here. And dense regular is found in tendons and ligaments. So here we are, as I magnify this, it's a dense connective tissue, so very little ground substance, mostly made up of collagen fibers, arranged all in very regular patterns. They're all going in the same direction. This makes it very different from the dense irregular connective tissue, which didn't look like it had any organization whatsoever, that was found deep to the skin. So this would be an example of dense regular connective tissue. The last kind of dense connective tissue was the elastic tissue, and for that one I'm going to go over to the circulatory system, because we can find that in something called an elastic artery. So I'm going to magnify this area here, and there are going to be a lot of elastic fibers, and you see again, we see these dark lines running through. They're kind of wavy, all in the same order, or the same going in the same direction, but this makes it elastic tissue, and it is easily able to expand, and then it will recoil back to its original shape. That is the function of elastic tissue. Alright, so let's go to the supporting connective tissues. So we're going to look at cartilage first. We'll look at hyaline cartilage here. And so what distinguishes cartilage from the other types, it's still going to have living cells. That's kind of these really dark dots that you see. And then all of the non-living matrix is surrounding the cells. And each cell is located in a little chamber called a lacuna. So there's lots of lacunae in this slide with chondrocytes, the living cells, located within them. And so this is hyaline cartilage, found connecting the ribs to the sternum, or at joint surfaces, the trachea, several different places that you would be able to find hyaline cartilage. Another type is elastic cartilage. And let's try this one. This is a good slide here, I think, of elastic cartilage. I still see this chamber is the lacuna. This is the cell, or the chondrocyte. So I see several of those throughout the slide here. And then I also see these dark fibers running through, and those are going to be the elastic fibers. Just like in the elastic tissue of the artery, we saw those dark lines. Here, that's what's going to lead you to know that this is elastic cartilage. For the third type of cartilage, fibrocartilage, I had to go to another website here. And this is a lacuna, and this is a chondrocyte. Same thing here. Here's a lacuna with a chondrocyte. Very few actual living cells, and we see mostly these kind of wavy fibers here. And this is going to be the fibrous cartilage, which kind of, that name tells you that you're looking at mostly fibers, very few cells. And this was fibrocartilage was found in a couple places. The intervertebral discs was one. The pubic symphysis was another place that you could find fibrocartilage. Bone tissue, sometimes called osseous tissue, is the last supporting type of connective tissue. And what I look for here, this is a relatively good spot here, is I look for these circles that remind me of tree rings. And this is, they always call this ground bone, but the living cells have been taken out, so everything that's left is the non-living matrix. And so these kind of dark spots here are the lacuna. Osteocytes would live in there if this was living bone. So we still have that type of arrangement like we did in cartilage, but they are mostly going to be arranged in this circular pattern around what's called a central canal, and that gives it kind of the look of tree rings or growth rings on a tree. So I think that bone is relatively easy to recognize once you know that, and you're going to be looking for these structures. All right, the last connective tissue to look for is blood. And so we'll look for a, where's our blood smear here? So we'll go back to circulatory system. Oh, I don't want a leukemia one though. So here we go. We have three types of cells that you would see on a slide of blood. We see red blood cells. That's what most of the cells are. Then we're going to see a white blood cell and these little tiny platelets. But this is an example of a blood smear or blood that has been put on a slide. So this is also connective tissue, or one of the fluid connective tissues. So I hope that this presentation will help you be able to identify all the different types of connective tissue.